She stands frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, tears streaming down her face as she holds a crumpled receipt in her trembling hands. The paper feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds as her eyes scan the words written across it. Behind her, through the doorway, framed family photos line the hallway walls, each one a memory of what she thought was real. The timestamp on the receipt reads 3:47 p.m., the exact same time he claimed he was sitting at his desk at work. Her eyes dart between the damning evidence and her own confused reflection, desperately searching for answers that don't exist. The bathroom is completely silent except for the sound of her breathing, becoming heavier with each passing second. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she speaks 3 words that shatter everything. He lied to me. The scene pulls back 7 days earlier, before the world fell apart and before suspicion poisoned everything she thought was true. Morning sunlight streams through the kitchen windows as she moves through their familiar routine like she has 1,000 times before. She pours coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, his favorite chipped one and her plain white one, and sets them on the counter exactly where they always go. He walks past her in his standard work uniform, a wrinkled polo shirt that's faded from too many washings and jeans that have seen better days. She doesn't even glance up as he leans down and plants a quick kiss on her cheek, mumbling something about running late for the office. They've been married for 9 years, and she knows his routine, so well she could recite it backward in her sleep. But what she doesn't know is that this ordinary Tuesday morning marks the very beginning of the end, the moment when something fundamental is about to shift and change everything forever. 3 days pass before she notices the first sign that something is desperately wrong with her husband. She's folding laundry in their bedroom when he walks in wearing a shirt she's absolutely certain she's never seen before in her entire life. The fabric is designer quality, impossibly soft and expensive looking, with pristine stitching and a cut that hugs his frame in a way his old clothes never have. The cologne is completely different too, something sophisticated and upscale that mingles with his usual scent in a way that instantly puts her on alert. She stops what she's doing and raises an eyebrow, asking him casually where he's going dressed like that. He shrugs with practiced nonchalance and says, "Just to the office," in a tone that absolutely does not match his carefully curated appearance. Her mind begins to flicker with questions she immediately tries to push down and ignore, but the seed of doubt has already been planted deep. She watches him adjust his collar in the mirror multiple times, something he hasn't done in at least 5 years, and she knows with absolute certainty that something feels very wrong. Over the next week, a pattern begins to emerge that becomes impossible for her to ignore or rationalize away. Every single morning without fail, he's waking up earlier than he ever has before, jumping out of bed while the sun is still barely risen. The shower runs longer now, with the sound of water cascading for what seems like an eternity. She hears the blow-dryer whirring with purpose and precision, something she hasn't heard him do in years, if ever. His closet slowly begins to overflow with designer clothes she doesn't recognize and has never seen him wear before. New shoes appear on the shelf lined up perfectly, in a way he's never bothered to arrange them. His phone is now permanently attached to his hand, constantly buzzing and vibrating, but he swipes it away with lightning speed whenever she enters the room. One morning, she catches him applying cologne 3 separate times before he finally heads out the door, testing each spray on his wrist like he's trying to find the perfect scent. He notices her watching him from the doorway, and his entire demeanor shifts in an instant. His jaw clenches, and he suddenly snaps at her with an edge in his voice she's never heard directed at her before. He demands to know why she's hovering, and insists that he just wants to look professional for work. But his voice trembles slightly as the words leave his mouth, and his eyes dart away from hers, unable to maintain contact. She knows him better than anyone in the world, and she can read him like an open book. Every micro-expression, every nervous gesture, every lie wrapped in defensiveness screams that something is very, very wrong beneath the surface. The way he's acting is not normal, not like the man she married, not like someone who has nothing to hide. She forces a tight smile and nods along, pretending to accept his explanation, but her stomach is twisting into knots and her mind is racing. That evening, she's sitting alone on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone when curiosity finally overpowers her better judgment. She asks him casually, trying to keep her voice light and unconcerned. "So where exactly are you going tomorrow? He barely glances up from his own phone before responding robotically. Same as always. Work. But something in his eyes betrays him instantly, a flicker of something guilty and nervous that he can't quite hide fast enough. She decides to push a little further, asking with forced casualness, "Any big meetings scheduled that I should know about?" His jaw tightens visibly, and a muscle in his cheek begins to twitch involuntarily. He fires back defensively, "No, just the usual day at the office." "Why are you asking so many questions?" The sharpness in his voice is startling and aggressive, a tone she's never heard him use with her in their entire marriage. She's never heard him use that particular tone with anyone, actually, and it sends chills down her spine. She manages a forced smile and a casual nod, but her eyes tell a completely different story. They reveal that she is now actively, deeply suspicious about what he's hiding. The next morning arrives, and she wakes up before he does with a decision already crystallizing in her mind. She knows what she's about to do is wrong, that it violates his privacy and trust in the most fundamental way possible. But her gut is screaming so loudly she can no longer ignore it, practically begging her to find out the truth. She waits until she hears the front door close behind him and watches from the window as his car pulls out of the driveway. She quickly grabs her keys with hands that are already trembling slightly. Her heart is pounding so hard against her ribs, she's amazed it doesn't break through her chest. She follows his car from a safe distance, keeping back several car lengths and using traffic as cover. The route is familiar at first. They're heading toward the office building where he claims to work every single day. But then, at the last possible moment, he turns left instead of right. His car speeds directly past the office exit without even slowing down or showing any indication that he ever planned to stop there. Her hands grip the steering wheel tighter as she accelerates slightly to keep him in sight, her suspicions shifting from confused and uncertain to absolutely, completely convinced. 10 minutes pass like an eternity as she watches his car navigate through traffic with clear purpose and destination. Then, suddenly, his car pulls into the parking lot of the Riverside Hotel, an upscale establishment across the city that she's only ever heard about through gossip. She watches from her car, parked 2 rows back, as he gets out and checks his reflection in the car window carefully. He straightens his shirt one more time with obsessive precision before walking through the front doors of the hotel with a confidence and purpose she hasn't seen in him in months. The realization crashes over her like a tsunami wave. He's having an affair. That's the only logical explanation for everything. The clothes, the cologne, the lies, the sneaking around. Her entire body goes cold as the implications sink in completely. She pulls out her phone with hands that are shaking so violently she can barely grip it, her mind spinning between calling him and just breaking down into tears right there in the parking lot. She sits in her car unable to move, her mind racing through years of memories and moments that now feel tainted and false. She thinks about their 9 years together, all the nights they've spent building a life, all the dreams they've planned for their future. She thinks about how he used to look at her in the early days with such intensity and passion, the way he's clearly now looking at someone else. She thinks about the late-night conversations that used to stretch until dawn, the kind they haven't had in longer than she can remember. She thinks about the physical intimacy that has slowly faded into routine silence and distant politeness. She thinks about the promises they made standing at that altar, both of them swearing to be faithful, to be honest, to be present no matter what life threw at them. Her hands are shaking so violently she can barely hold her phone, and tears are streaming down her face in rivers. She could walk into that hotel right now and confront him in front of whoever he's meeting, expose his betrayal publicly and dramatically. But as she sits paralyzed in her car, a small voice of doubt creeps into her consciousness and makes her hesitate. What if she's jumping to conclusions based on incomplete information? What if there's some innocent explanation for all of this that she hasn't considered? Maybe he's meeting with a business client about an important deal. Maybe he's planning something special for their upcoming anniversary as a romantic gesture. Maybe she's being paranoid and ridiculous, letting her imagination run away with her. She pulls out her phone and opens their shared calendar with trembling fingers. Scrolling through his schedule, there's nothing written down for today on his side at all. She takes a deep breath and calls his office, pretending to be his wife with an emergency that needs his attention immediately. The receptionist's voice comes through the phone, casual and offhand. "I'm sorry, but your husband hasn't been in all week." Her blood turns to ice in her veins and freezes solid. The casual lie he told her this morning suddenly feels like a knife being twisted directly into her chest. She realizes with crystalline clarity that she needs answers, and she needs them right now. She makes a decision sitting there in that parking lot that will change everything about how she approaches this nightmare. She's going to dig deeper, investigate everything, and find out exactly who he's meeting and why he's lying so carefully about it. She pulls out her phone and opens her notes app with shaking fingers, documenting everything: the hotel name, the exact time, the date, and every detail she can remember from following him. Her heart is still racing, but her mind is becoming clearer now, focused and determined to uncover the truth, no matter what that truth might turn out to be. She starts the car and drives home in complete silence, unable to listen to music or the radio, her thoughts too loud and consuming. By the time she pulls into the driveway, she has a plan forming in her mind, a way to catch him red-handed without tipping him off. She walks into the empty house and sits on the kitchen floor, her back against the cold tile wall, staring blankly at nothing. The weight of what she's discovered settles onto her shoulders like a physical burden she has to carry. She thinks about confronting him tonight, about demanding answers, about forcing him to look her in the eye and explain everything. But she realizes that confrontation will be messy and complicated, and he'll probably have prepared lies ready to deploy. She needs to know everything first: who this woman is, how long this has been going on, whether it's just physical or if it's something much deeper. She needs to have all the ammunition before she walks into battle. She pulls out her phone and opens his social media accounts, scrolling through everything he's posted recently looking for clues she might have missed. Over the next 3 days, she becomes obsessed with gathering information and building a case against him. She follows him to the hotel twice more, confirming that this isn't a one-time occurrence, but a pattern of systematic betrayal. Each time she watches him walk through those doors with the same confident stride, adjusting his clothes like he's a different person. She takes photos with her phone, date and timestamps visible, of his car parked in the hotel lot, of him walking through the lobby, of him entering an elevator. She's building evidence methodically, like a detective constructing a case against a criminal. She even sits in the hotel lobby once, wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, watching him emerge from an elevator after 45 minutes, his shirt slightly rumpled and his hair slightly disheveled. The waiting becomes unbearable, and her mind spirals into dark places she didn't know existed. She imagines him with another woman, touching her the way he used to touch her, saying the things to her that he used to whisper to her in the dark. She imagines him telling this other woman that he loves her, making promises he never kept to his own wife. She imagines a woman who is younger, prettier, thinner, everything she's worried about being as she's gotten older. She imagines their entire marriage being a lie, wonders if there were warning signs she missed or ignored because she was too comfortable and complacent. She checks his phone when he's in the shower one night, scrolling frantically through his messages, but he's deleted everything incriminating. She finds an encrypted messaging app she's never seen before on his phone, but it's password protected and she can't access it. One night, instead of going to bed at their normal time, she lies awake next to him in the darkness, listening to him breathe, wondering if he's even asleep or if he's lying awake thinking about the other woman. She reaches over and gently touches his arm, and he flinches in his sleep, muttering something incoherent. She wonders if he's dreaming about her, if she's invaded not just his waking hours but his subconscious mind as well. She feels a wave of anger and hurt crash over her that's so intense she has to get out of bed and go to the bathroom to compose herself. She stares at her reflection in the mirror and barely recognizes the woman staring back at her, exhausted, broken, transformed by this knowledge into someone she doesn't want to be. She decides she needs to confront him, that waiting any longer will destroy her completely from the inside out. But she wants to do it strategically, catching him off guard when he won't have time to prepare his lies and excuses. She decides to follow him to the hotel one more time, and when he's inside, she'll call him and pretend she's concerned about something at home and needs him to come back immediately. She'll see how he responds, whether he prioritizes seeing this other woman over his wife's supposed emergency. The next morning arrives, and she feels like she's going to throw up from the anxiety and dread building in her stomach. She watches him get ready with his usual routine, applying that expensive cologne, checking himself in the mirror multiple times. When he leaves, she waits exactly 5 minutes before following him, keeping her distance and using traffic as a shield. They drive through the city streets, and her hands are white-knuckling the steering wheel as her anxiety spikes higher and higher. The hotel appears, and she watches him park and walk inside without any hesitation. She parks 3 rows back and waits, counting the minutes on her dashboard clock. At exactly 15 minutes after he entered, she dials his number with her heart pounding so hard she can barely breathe. The phone rings and rings, going to voicemail, and she hangs up without leaving a message. He didn't answer. He didn't even pick up to hear what his wife needed. She tries calling again, and this time he answers on the second ring, his voice cautious and guarded. She puts on her best concerned wife voice and tells him there's been an accident, that she fell down the stairs and thinks she might have broken something, that she needs him to come home right now. There's a long pause on the other end of the line, a hesitation that lasts just long enough for her to hear the truth in the silence. He tells her he's about 20 minutes away from home already, and he'll be there as soon as he can. But that's impossible. He just got to the hotel 15 minutes ago. He's lying again, another lie stacked on top of all the other lies. She hangs up and waits. 5 minutes later, he emerges from the hotel looking slightly panicked, his shirt hastily tucked in, and his hair not quite as perfectly arranged as when he went inside. He practically runs to his car and speeds out of the parking lot, heading toward their house. She follows from a distance, her mind reeling from the confirmation that he's willing to lie about his location, even in what he believes is an emergency situation. When she gets home, she quickly lies down on the floor at the bottom of the stairs, positioning herself like she's been in an accident. She hears his car screech into the driveway and the door slam. He comes running into the house calling her name, and she watches as relief floods his face when he sees she's moving. But then his expression shifts as he realizes something is off. She's not bleeding, there's nothing obviously broken, and the scenario doesn't quite add up in his mind. He helps her up slowly and asks what happened, his voice uncertain and skeptical. She tells him she tripped on the carpet and fell, that she was scared she'd done serious damage to herself. He nods slowly, but she can see the doubt flickering across his features. He asks her if she's sure she's okay, and she notices he keeps glancing at his phone, clearly anxious about something. She watches him carefully as he sits next to her on the couch, and for the first time in their entire marriage, she realizes she doesn't trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. She stands up slowly and tells him she's going to take a shower to calm her nerves, that she'll be fine and he doesn't need to worry. He seems relieved that he doesn't have to cancel whatever he's planning to do next, and she watches him immediately pull out his phone and start texting furiously. The shower becomes her sanctuary for the next 20 minutes, where she can finally let herself break down completely, the water masking the sound of her sobs and the shaking of her body. When she emerges, he's already gone, claiming an emergency came up at work and he had to head back to the office. She doesn't even respond, just watches him leave with a cold feeling of certainty settling into her chest. She now knows for absolutely certain that their marriage is fundamentally broken, and that she has no choice but to face whatever comes next. That night, she sits alone in their bedroom staring at their wedding photo on the nightstand, her mind flooded with memories of a different time when everything felt real and genuine. She remembers the day they met at a coffee shop where she worked, how he ordered the same thing every day for 2 weeks before finally asking for her number. She remembers their first kiss on a rainy night in the parking lot, how he pulled her close and told her he felt like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. She remembers the day he proposed at sunset on a beach they'd visited for their anniversary, getting down on one knee in front of strangers who cheered when she said yes through her tears. She remembers feeling like she was the luckiest woman alive, like fate had orchestrated everything perfectly to bring them together at exactly the right moment in time. But now, looking at that same smiling face in the photograph, all she feels is a deep, aching sense of betrayal and loss. She wonders when exactly everything changed, when the man she married transformed into this lying stranger who sneaks around and constructs elaborate deceptions. She thinks about all the moments she missed, all the red flags she didn't see because she was too caught up in the routines of daily life. She thinks about how marriage is supposed to be a partnership built on trust and honesty, and how he systematically destroyed both of those foundations brick by brick. She gets out of bed and walks to his closet, running her fingers across those expensive designer clothes he's been hiding from her. She pulls out one of the shirts and brings it to her face, breathing in that sophisticated cologne, and it feels like drowning in betrayal. She spends the entire night awake, lying in the dark, listening to the grandfather clock in the hallway chime the hours as they pass. She hears him come home around 2 in the morning, trying to be quiet so he doesn't wake her, but she feels the mattress shift as he climbs into bed. She lies completely still, barely breathing, wanting to scream and confront him right there in the darkness. But instead she remains silent, playing the role of sleeping wife while her mind churns with 1,000 different scenarios and questions. She wonders if he's lying in bed thinking about the other woman, if he's comparing her unfavorably to his mistress, if he's counting down the minutes until he can see her again. The not knowing becomes almost worse than the truth itself, a torture of her own imagination. The next morning, she makes a decision that surprises even herself. She's going to confront him, but not yet. First, she needs to know who this woman is, what her name is, what her story is. She needs to understand what this other person has that she doesn't, what could possibly make him risk everything they've built together. She decides to hire a private investigator, something she never thought she'd do, something that feels both extreme and completely necessary at the same time. She finds a contact online and meets with the investigator in a coffee shop across town where no one they know will see her. She hands over the photos she's taken and describes in detail where he goes and what times he goes there. The investigator, a woman named Sarah who seems to have seen everything the city has to offer, listens carefully to her story without judgment. Sarah takes down all the information and promises to have preliminary findings within 48 hours. The investigator's calm, professional demeanor is oddly comforting, as if she's no longer alone in this nightmare. She pays for the first week of investigation up front and walks out into the daylight feeling like she's finally taking back some control. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, she feels like she has agency, like she's not just a victim waiting passively for her life to implode. She has a plan and she's executing it, which somehow makes the pain feel slightly more bearable. Back at home that afternoon, she tries to act normal when he arrives back from wherever he's actually going all day. She makes dinner like she usually does, sets the table the way she always has, and sits across from him making small talk about nothing important. He seems tense and distracted, constantly checking his phone and barely eating anything she's prepared. She watches him carefully, analyzing every gesture and microexpression, looking for new signs of guilt and deception. She wonders if he's feeling conflicted, if part of him is struggling with the weight of his lies, or if he's just annoyed that his affair is being disrupted. She doesn't ask him anything directly because she's learned that any direct questions make him defensive and angry, and she needs information more than she needs confrontation right now. That night, her phone buzzes with a text from the investigator's number. Found something. Meet me tomorrow at the same coffee shop. 10 a.m. Bring someone you trust. Her heart nearly stops at those words. Bring someone you trust. Those 4 words imply that whatever Sarah has discovered is big enough and significant enough that she won't want to face it alone. She stares at the text message for several minutes, her hands shaking as her mind spirals through worst-case scenarios. What could she possibly have found that would require backup? What does she know about his other woman that's so significant it demands emotional support? She decides to call her best friend Maya, someone who has known her since college and who she trusts completely. She meets Maya the next morning at the coffee shop, not telling her anything except that she needs support for something difficult. Maya can see immediately that something is seriously wrong, that her best friend has been through emotional trauma. They sit at a small table in the corner of the coffee shop, away from other customers, and Sarah the investigator arrives with a manila folder. She sits down without any preamble and opens the folder, revealing photographs and documents. The first photo makes her breath catch in her throat. It's not a woman at all. It's a man, younger than her husband, with dark hair and kind eyes. It's a man she's never seen before in her entire life. Sarah explains in a calm voice that for the past 3 weeks, her husband has been meeting with this man at the hotel every single day. She's conducted interviews with hotel staff and discovered that they've been renting the same suite consistently. She's been following them to other locations as well, restaurants, parks, late-night drives through the city. And the kicker that changes everything, this man's name is David, and he's her husband's half-brother, someone he apparently didn't know existed until 3 weeks ago when David reached out to him. Sarah produces documents showing that David is their father's illegitimate child from an affair that happened before her husband was even born. Her husband discovered this shocking family secret and has been secretly meeting with his half-brother to get to know him, having decided not to tell his wife because he didn't know how to explain it. She sits completely still, unable to process what she's hearing, unable to reconcile this new information with the narrative she's been constructing for the past week. Maya grabs her hand and squeezes it, sensing that everything her friend thought she knew has just been completely upended and turned inside out. The investigator continues explaining that David is in a difficult situation. He's estranged from their father and has been searching for a real family connection his entire life. Her husband apparently felt compelled to help him, to be the brother he never had, without understanding how suspicious his behavior would look. Sarah explains that David told her husband he'd understand if he didn't want to be part of his life, but her husband insisted on building a relationship with him, which is why the secret meetings and the careful deceptions. She leaves the coffee shop feeling completely numb, her mind unable to fully process what she's just learned. Maya drives her home, and she sits in the passenger seat staring out the window at the city passing by, not really seeing anything. She spent an entire week convinced her marriage was over, convinced she was being betrayed by the man she loved, convinced that everything they built was a lie. But the truth, it turns out, is far more complicated and far less simple than she'd imagined. She feels a mixture of relief that there's no affair, anger that he didn't trust her enough to tell her the truth, and guilt for assuming the worst about him without any evidence beyond his changed appearance. The emotional roller coaster has left her feeling exhausted and uncertain about what comes next. When she gets home, she finds him already there, which is unusual because he's typically gone by this time of day meeting with David. He's sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, and he looks up when he hears her come in. His face is pale and his eyes are red-rimmed, like he's been crying or on the verge of it. He immediately stands up and asks where she's been, his voice tight with worry and something else she can't quite identify. She realizes in that moment that he knows something is wrong, that he's sensed her investigating, that his secret is about to come crashing down on him. She asks him to sit down, that they need to talk about something very important. He sits rigidly in the chair, his jaw clenching as he waits for her to speak. She tells him that she knows everything, that she followed him to the hotel, that she hired an investigator, that she knows about David and the secret meetings and the lies. She watches his face as the truth washes over him, watches him process the realization that his careful deception has been completely exposed. For a moment he says nothing, just stares at her with an expression of complete devastation and shame. Then his face crumples, and he starts to cry, real tears streaming down his face as the weight of his secrets finally becomes too much to carry alone. He tells her that he's sorry, that he was going to tell her but he didn't know how, that he was afraid of how she'd react to the news about David. He explains that when David first reached out to him 3 weeks ago, he was shocked and confused and didn't want to tell her until he understood the situation himself. He continues his explanation, his voice breaking with emotion as he describes discovering he had a half-brother who'd been searching for him for years. He talks about how David was abandoned by their father, how he grew up in foster care bouncing between homes, how he never had a stable family connection his entire life. He tells her that when David finally found him through an online genealogy search, he felt an immediate connection and responsibility to be the brother that David never had. He was ashamed to admit that he'd immediately accepted David into his life without question, without even considering what it might look like to her or how his secretive behavior would make her suspicious. He tells her that the new clothes and cologne were because David was helping him build confidence, that David thought he looked too tired and worn down by work. She listens to his entire explanation without interrupting, her anger slowly transforming into something more complex and nuanced. She realizes that her husband's deception, while still wrong, came from a place of good intention. He was trying to help someone who desperately needed family and connection, even though his methods were completely misguided and his communication was absolutely terrible. She tells him that while she understands why he did what he did, she's hurt that he didn't trust her enough to be honest about it. She's hurt that he let her worry and imagine the worst instead of just sitting down and having an adult conversation about a complicated family situation. She's hurt that he chose secrecy over honesty, even if his reasons were compassionate. He nods and accepts her words, understanding that she has every right to be angry with him. He tells her that he wants to make it right, that he wants to introduce her to David, that he wants her to understand that this isn't a threat to their marriage, but rather an expansion of their family. He asks her if she would be willing to meet David, to see for herself that he's just a person searching for belonging, that he means no harm. He promises her that there will be no more secrets, no more lies, and that he should have told her from the very beginning. He tells her that the shame of having such a complicated family history made him act irrationally, but that's no excuse for how he treated her. She agrees to meet David, though she's still processing everything and she's still angry about the deception. But she also recognizes that her husband was facing a genuinely complicated situation and he handled it poorly, which is different from handling it with malicious intent. They sit at the kitchen table for hours, talking through everything. His feelings about discovering he had an illegitimate half-brother, his complicated relationship with their father, his desire to be the person for David that he never had. She learns that their father had multiple affairs throughout his life, that David was just one of potentially several children he'd abandoned. She learns that her husband has been secretly trying to help David get on his feet, paying for his apartment and helping him find a job. That weekend, she meets David for the first time at a casual coffee shop near their house. She's nervous and uncertain what to expect, but what she finds is a young man who is genuinely kind, genuinely grateful for her husband's effort to connect with him, and genuinely afraid that she might hate him for coming into their lives and causing disruption. David tells her that he understands if she wants nothing to do with him, that he's used to people rejecting him and pushing him away. He explains that he never intended to cause problems in her marriage, that he would have been fine with her husband keeping their relationship a secret forever if that's what it took. She sees in David a reflection of her husband, the same kind eyes, the same manner of speaking, the same nervous habit of adjusting his collar when he's uncomfortable. Something shifts in her that moment when she looks at David and sees not a threat to her marriage, but rather a lost soul searching for family. She realizes that her husband's impulse to help was actually beautiful and compassionate, even though his execution was terribly flawed. She tells David that she's glad he reached out to her husband, that she's sorry his life has been difficult, and that she would like to get to know him better. She watches David's face transform with relief and gratitude, and she can see tears forming in his eyes as he realizes he's found not just a half-brother but a sister as well. Her husband reaches over and squeezes her hand, and she can feel the tension draining from his shoulders. Over the next few weeks, David becomes a regular part of their lives in a way that feels natural and honest. They invite him over for dinners, they include him in their plans, and slowly they learn his story piece by piece. David tells them about his childhood in foster care, about the various families who took him in and cast him out, about his search for belonging that lasted years before he finally found her husband. He tells them about his dreams and his fears, about how he's terrified of messing up his newfound family connection because it means everything to him. She finds herself developing genuine affection for David, seeing him not as a threat, but as someone who has been through genuine hardship and who deserves to have people in his corner. Her husband apologizes repeatedly for his deception, promising that he's learned his lesson about keeping secrets from her. He tells her that he should have trusted her, that he should have known she would understand if he just explained the situation properly from the beginning. He tells her that the shame around his family's dysfunction was what prevented him from being honest, that he was embarrassed about having such a complicated father and such a complicated family situation. She accepts his apology and tells him that while she's still hurt, she understands why he acted the way he did. They agree to go to couples counseling to rebuild the trust that was damaged by his deception, even though the deception wasn't what she initially feared. The discovery that she made by following her husband to that hotel, the investigation that revealed he was meeting with another person in secret, turned out to be not about infidelity but about family. It was about her husband trying to do the right thing in the wrong way, about a lost soul searching for belonging, about the complicated ways that family secrets and shame can poison even the most well-intentioned actions. She realizes that jumping to conclusions without having all the information was a mistake, but she also recognizes that his secretive behavior gave her very legitimate reasons to be suspicious. They both learned lessons from this experience. He learned that honesty and communication are more important than protecting people from complicated family situations, and she learned that sometimes the truth, is more complicated than our initial assumptions. As she looks back on those chaotic weeks of suspicion and investigation and emotional turmoil, she realizes that the experience, while painful, actually strengthened her marriage in unexpected ways. By going through the crisis together, by facing the truth together, by working through the complicated emotions that arose, they developed a deeper understanding of each other. They learned that their marriage could survive secrets being revealed, lies being confronted, and painful conversations being had. They learned that they were strong enough to work through something that could have easily destroyed them. And David, who started as an unknown stranger that she suspected her husband of seeing romantically, became a beloved member of their family, someone she now considers a true brother. She thinks back to that moment in the hotel parking lot when she felt like her entire world was crashing down, when she was convinced that everything she believed in was a lie. She remembers the crushing weight of betrayal, the way her heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. But she also recognizes that sometimes what looks like the worst possible truth is actually a much more complicated reality than we initially imagined. Sometimes people who love us make mistakes. Sometimes they handle complicated situations poorly. Sometimes they keep secrets for reasons that seem compelling to them, even if those reasons don't hold up to scrutiny. The journey from suspicion to understanding was painful and difficult, but it was also necessary and ultimately transformative. Today, as she watches her husband and his brother David laughing together at the dinner table, sharing inside jokes and memories they're building together, she feels a sense of peace and acceptance. The marriage that she thought was broken is actually stronger than it was before. The family that seemed fractured by lies and deception is actually more complete and more whole because David is part of it now. She learned that sometimes following your instincts and investigating your suspicions leads to truths that are messy and complicated but also ultimately redemptive. She learned that confrontation, while scary and difficult, can lead to deeper honesty and stronger connections. And most importantly, she learned that her husband, despite his flaws and his poor decision-making, was trying to do something good and compassionate, even if the way he went about it was completely wrong.